I am 73 years old. We were driving back from a hardware store in West Knoxville last spring, and I had my foot hovering over the brake pedal as we came down the exit ramp. Out of nowhere, the muscle in my right calf seized up so violently it felt like a steel cable had snapped tight under my skin. My foot jerked off the pedal. The pain was so intense my vision actually blurred for a second. I had to throw the truck into neutral, coast onto the gravel shoulder, and throw the emergency brake on with my left hand while I gripped my right leg in absolute agony. Linda was terrified. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the muscle to unlock, breathing heavy and feeling completely out of control of my own body. I spent 30 years walking the concrete floors of a distribution warehouse. I moved heavy freight, I climbed metal stairs, and I spent 12 hours a day on my feet. My legs were the tools I used to make a living. When you retire, you expect things to slow down. You expect to lose a little speed? What you do not expect is for your own body to turn against you in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. I sat on the side of the highway, rubbing my calf, trying to convince myself it was just a random cramp. But it was not random. It had been happening at night for months, pulling me out of a dead sleep. Now it was happening while I was driving. I realized right then that I was becoming a danger to myself and my wife, and I was entirely ready to hand the car keys over to my son and admit defeat. My daughter Megan came to the house a few days later. She is an occupational therapist, and she spends her days working with older folks who are losing their mobility. I told her what happened in the truck. I expected her to tell me I needed to drink more water or eat a banana. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table and told me about a medical paper she had just finished reading. It tracked men in their late 60s and 70s, and it showed that severe muscle locking is not a normal part of getting older. Over 70% of seniors who experience debilitating cramps are actually suffering from a severe, self-inflicted mineral deficiency. We are literally draining the electrical charge out of our own legs. I sat in my armchair for 3 nights straight after that conversation, looking at every single thing I consumed on a daily basis. I treated my own body like a broken engine that I needed to diagnose. I realized I was actively suffocating my own muscle tissue. I narrowed the problem down to 4 specific things. 3 of them were massive mistakes I was making to try and fix the cramps, which were actually making the problem much worse. The 4th thing was one incredibly popular little pill sitting in my bathroom cabinet that was actively destroying my leg strength. I am going to tell you exactly what all 4 of these things are. We have to talk about the mistakes first because you cannot fix a broken machine if you keep pouring the wrong oil into it. The first mistake I had to stop making was drowning my body in plain tap water. Every time I got a cramp, someone told me I was just dehydrated. So I started drinking massive glasses of water all day long. I forced myself to drink 8 large glasses a day. I thought I was lubricating the muscles. I thought I was flushing out the toxins. What I was actually doing was flushing the last remaining electrical charge right out of my system. When a muscle contracts, it needs a specific electrical signal to release. That signal is carried by minerals like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. If you are 73 years old and you flood your system with plain, empty water, you dilute the concentration of those minerals in your blood. The kidneys panic and flush the excess water out, taking the precious minerals with it. I was literally washing the relaxant right out of my own legs. Megan showed me a clinical study that looked at older adults who aggressively overhydrated with plain water versus those who drank water balanced with trace minerals. The group drinking plain water saw a 40% drop in their intracellular magnesium levels over a 2-month period. Their muscles were becoming more rigid by the day because they had no minerals left to trigger the release. It made me think of my old friend Marcus from the warehouse. Marcus started carrying a massive plastic jug of water everywhere he went when he turned 70. He thought he was being incredibly healthy, but his leg cramps got so bad he had to stop playing golf because he would lock up on the putting green. He was drowning his own muscles. I stopped forcing the plain water immediately and started adding a small pinch of high-quality sea salt to my morning glass to keep the charge inside my body. The second mistake was believing the oldest lie in the book about leg cramps. I was eating 2 bananas every single night before bed. Everyone tells you to eat bananas for the potassium. I bought bunches of them. I thought I was eating medicine. I was dead wrong. An older body does not handle a massive dump of sugar at 9 o'clock at night the way a younger body does. When you eat a banana before bed, you are flooding your system with fructose. That causes a massive spike in insulin. What nobody tells you is that a spike in insulin completely alters the way your kidneys handle minerals. Instead of absorbing the small amount of potassium in that fruit, the insulin spike forces your body to excrete magnesium. I was eating a piece of fruit to get a tiny bit of potassium, and in the process I was forcing my body to throw away the exact mineral it desperately needed to keep my calves from locking up. I read a paper from a university that tracked men over 65 who consumed high-sugar fruits in the evening. The men experienced a significant reduction in overnight muscle relaxation. The sugar was keeping their nervous system on high alert, and the insulin was stripping their muscles of the building blocks needed to stay calm. A guy I know from church named William fell into this exact trap. He was eating bananas all day long to stop his leg cramps. He ended up putting on 12 pounds around his waist from all the sugar, and his legs still locked up every night at 2 in the morning. He traded his waistline for a remedy that did not even work. I stopped bringing bananas into the house that same week. The third mistake was how I reacted when the cramp actually hit. Whenever that calf muscle knotted up, my first instinct was to jump out of bed or get out of the chair and force my legs straight. I would press my foot against the wall and stretch the muscle as hard as I could. I thought I had to pull it apart to get it to release. I was doing catastrophic damage to my own tissue. When an older muscle locks into a severe cramp, the muscle spindle is essentially panicked. It is clamped down to protect itself. If you force that muscle straight while it is locked, you are not relaxing it. You are literally tearing the microscopic fibers apart. You are ripping the fabric. That is why my legs always felt bruised and weak for 3 days after a bad cramp. I was injuring myself trying to fix it. I found a research trial that compared older men who aggressively stretch cramps versus men who learned to shorten the muscle first. The men who forced the stretch experienced micro tears in their calves that took 50% longer to heal. They were permanently weakening their legs with every single cramp. My brother-in-law Robert did this. He got a cramp while doing yard work, forced his legs straight, and actually tore his Achilles tendon. He had to wear a walking boot for 3 months because he tried to fight a locked muscle with brute force. I had to train myself to do the exact opposite. When a cramp hit, I learned to point my toe down, shortening the muscle, and gently massage the center of the knot to calm the nerve before I ever tried to stand on it. Stopping those 3 mistakes kept me from making the problem worse, but my legs still felt like they were vibrating. They still felt tight, hollow, and ready to lock up at any second. I had stopped pouring bad oil into the engine, but the engine was still running dry. I needed to figure out what was actively stealing the minerals out of my blood. That is when I looked in the medicine cabinet and found the 4th thing on this list. The single popular pill that changed everything. I had been taking a daily antacid pill for 4 years. The kind you buy over the counter, the ones called proton pump inhibitors. I took one every single morning because my doctor told me it would protect my stomach from the black coffee I drank. I thought I was doing the responsible thing. I thought I was protecting my digestion. I was actually starving my legs to death. Those daily antacid pills work by completely turning off the acid production in your stomach. But an older man's body desperately needs stomach acid to break down and absorb minerals from food. If you have no stomach acid, you cannot absorb magnesium. It does not matter how much spinach you eat or what supplements you take. The pill blocks the door. The magnesium passes right through you. And without magnesium, your muscles literally cannot receive the electrical signal to relax. The antacid pill was keeping my stomach quiet by turning my leg muscles into rigid stone. I read an FDA warning that looked specifically at older men taking these daily heartburn pills. The warning was clear. Long-term use of these pills causes severe hypomagnesemia, a massive drop in magnesium. The men in the studies developed severe muscle spasms, leg cramps, and profound weakness in their lower bodies because the pill was completely blocking the absorption of the one mineral that keeps muscles functioning. I was absolutely floored. I had been terrified of losing my ability to drive, and the cause was sitting right there in a little plastic bottle next to my toothbrush. I did not wait. I threw the entire bottle into the garbage can that morning. I decided I would rather figure out how to manage my stomach naturally by changing what I ate than continue to let a pill steal the freedom right out of my legs. I started adding a high-quality magnesium glycinate supplement to my routine, the kind that actually absorbs now that my stomach was allowed to work properly again. The change was not immediate. The body takes time to rebuild the reserves you have drained away. But about 3 weeks after I threw that pill away, I was sleeping in bed. I woke up at 4 in the morning to use the bathroom. I swung my legs out, put my feet on the cold hardwood floor, and stood up. I stopped and just stood there in the dark. My calves were completely quiet. There was no tightness. There was no vibration. There was no lingering threat that the muscle was going to roll up into a knot. A few weeks after that, I got back in Derek's truck. I drove 40 miles down the interstate, feathering the gas, using the brake, sitting in traffic. My right leg held steady the entire time. The tension was gone. The strength was back. The armor was holding. When you get to be my age, you realize that independence is not a given. It is something you have to actively protect every single day. Muscle does not just lock up because the calendar turns over. It locks up when you stop giving it the fuel it needs, and it locks up when you swallow things that quietly steal that fuel away. You do not have to accept that your world is going to get smaller. You do not have to accept the fear of your own legs betraying you. You just have to be willing to look at the habits you trust and have the courage to throw the bad ones away. I am going to head out to the driveway now. Linda wants to go look at some new patio furniture on the other side of town, and I am going to drive her there. Take care of your legs, pay attention to what you put in your body, and do not let anyone tell you that pain is just part of the deal. I will be right here if you want to talk again.